Hi, and welcome to the sensory processing video series. Today's video is going to talk about what is sensory processing and how does it impact your child. I'm going to try to give you the skinny on sensory processing. So here it goes. What the heck are people talking about when they say sensory processing? Basically what it means is that we have sensations coming to us through our environment. And sensory processing is basically how we process and respond to those sensations that are coming to us through our environment. So what kind of sensations are there? Well, we have to go back to our 5 senses. So we have sensations through touch, through taste, through smell, through hearing, and through vision. There's 2 more senses. I'm going to talk to you about those in just a second. But back to those senses. So let's take the auditory sense, the sense of sound. So sounds come in to our head, our brain processes that sound, and we have a response. So someone who has probably typical functioning auditory sense can go to a super loud concert, or can be around the vacuum cleaner, or can hear a fire alarm and not have an adverse reaction or an emotional reaction that we would not expect. They hear the sound and they think, oh, that's just a loud sound. I'm just going to do whatever I'm going to do. People who don't have a functioning auditory system might have a very strong emotional response. Ever seen a kid hear the fire alarm at school and cover their ears and look distressed and run away? That's a strong response to sound. And that might tell us that they have maybe a bit of a defensive response to sound, and that's why they reacted that way. So I said we had 5 senses, and then I said there was 2 more. Let's just talk about those. So we have 2 more senses that some people refer to as the hidden senses or the inner senses. And they are our movement sense and our proprioceptive sense. Okay, I will explain those to you. Our movement sense is related to our vestibular system, and it tells us about where we are in space. It gives us information on our balance, and it has to do with movement. So when I'm on a swing, I know I'm moving forwards and back, I'm upright, and I feel great. This is all related to our vestibular sense. That fluid that's in our inner ears gives us information on our balance and how our head is against gravity. What does that have to do with sensory processing? Well, some kids have fears around when their feet are not firmly planted on the ground and their head is not upright with gravity. So if they get on a swing and get tilted back too far, they might have a strong reaction to that sensation because they don't like being tilted back. Or it could be they don't like playing on the playground equipment because they don't like climbing up slides and having their feet leave the ground and feeling unbalanced. On the other side of that, you have those kids that move. We call those kids on the go, constantly fidgeting, rocking while they're sitting still. This tells us that they need more movement and they love maybe movement, and that's why they do it so much. What's really important about movement is that some kids move because it gives them information about where they are. And they need to move to keep their brain going, to focus. Maybe they don't have a ton of trunk control, so sitting at crisscross applesauce at the carpet is hard for them. So they might be moving to fire those muscles so they can actually stay in that sitting position. So there's lots of reasons why kids might move or have reactions to movement, and that's where it's important to understand what your child's preferences are so that you can figure out why you're seeing certain things when they're doing certain activities. The last sense is the proprioceptive sense. That's a really big word for body awareness. So in my proprioceptive sense, I know where my body is in space. I get information from our muscles, our joint receptors, muscle spindles, and it tells me where I am. So I know right now that my hand is up in the air, and now I know it's touching my head, and now I know it's down below because, without looking at it, because I have a good functioning proprioceptive sense. Proprioception is also important with knowing how hard to hold things. So I know how hard to hold a pencil without breaking the lead. I know how hard to hold a coffee cup without dropping on the floor. I know how hard to throw a ball to someone who's close to me versus how hard to throw it when they're far away. This is all has to do with our body awareness, and this is super important because sometimes you see kids that seem a bit uncoordinated, they're clumsy, they're tripping, they're dropping things. That tells us they probably have a challenge in their body awareness and their proprioceptive sense. And so that will tell us these are activities that we need to work on to give them a better sense and to teach them better body awareness. Another thing I hear about body awareness all the time is, my child is always in my personal body space, or he's always too close to his friends and people don't like it. He doesn't understand where he needs to be to not be in people's spaces. Well, children who don't have great body awareness don't realize they're too close to people. They don't even understand that there's this personal body space bubble. They just think being close is what they're supposed to do. And some kids are doing it because it gives them information about where they are in space. So what's happening when children have responses to things that we're not expecting, or their sensory processing isn't working well? Well, if we look at what sensory processing is, taking in sensations coming at us in our environment, filtering them through, registering them, processing, and developing a response. In those children, somewhere in that whole system, something broke down. Sometimes I like to refer to it as something got muddled, or there was a bit of a traffic jam in the whole processing of the brain, and then we got that unexpected response. So that's a way to look at what is happening when sensory processing isn't working well. But one thing to keep in mind is that we all have sensory preferences. Everyone has sensory preferences. Some people like spicy foods, some people like bland foods, some people like tight-fitting clothing, some people like loose-fitting clothing. Some people are adrenaline junkies and love to do scary high-risk sports, and some people prefer to do quiet activities and not go out in nature and do crazy things. And that's just the way we are. We're all built differently. It's just a matter of how well we can adapt when we're doing things that aren't our preference, or how we adapt our environment so that we don't have to do those things or expose ourselves to those sensations that we don't like. As adults, we've come up with lots of strategies to do that, but children have not, and they are just responding in the best way they can. So sometimes when we have sensory processing challenges, we're going to see behaviors. Here's a list of some common behaviors we tend to see with children who have sensory processing challenges. We also can get dysregulated. So some children are dysregulated because they're seeking and moving all the time and touch, touch, touch. Some children are dysregulated because they're super sensitive to what happened and they hide and they cry and they become upset. Some children are super stubborn because they are trying to actively avoid those things. And you think they're being inflexible, but they're actually just trying to be proactive for their own little bodies. And then we have the kids that don't seem to register things the same way we would expect. Everything just kind of goes by them and they don't even really notice. So this is all part of sensory processing, and what this video series is going to do is we're going to go through the most common challenges I see in everyday life, the most common things I hear from parents. How do I help my child with this everyday task? And that's what this video series is going to go through. It's going to give you lots of strategies on how you help your child when they're having sensory processing challenges in their everyday life.